Hey Pokedad Fan Club, it's me Pokedad, and today we're doing another deck profile. It's been a while since I've visited Night March. Ever since the rotation, I don't think there's been a great Night March. I did do a Night March Vespaquin deck, uh, but now it seems like there's a lot of Night March decks that are just going it alone without Vespaquin. And so if you are planning on going to cities, this is probably going to be the type of Night March deck you'll see. So I want to go ahead and show you it. You might want to even consider playing it because it's a very, very strong and consistent deck. So we're going to take a look at it today. It's Night March now, and it has a few new things to it. One thing you probably haven't seen before is it's playing Milotic now. And we also play Buddy Buddy Rescue, which who thought that card would get used, but very, very actually useful card in this deck. So let's just take a look at this deck. If you've seen other PokeTubers, you've probably seen a deck very, very similar to this. But if you haven't, I want to make you aware of it because it's a very strong, very consistent deck. And if nothing else, you need to be ready for it. You need to have an answer for it. Alright, so let's look at our Night Marchers. So our main two attackers are Joltik, which has the Night March attack, and Pumpkaboo, which also has the Night March attack. Now Joltik, for double colorless, can attack, but only has 30 HP. Pumpkaboo, on the other hand, has double the HP, but it takes 3 colorless. If we use Dimension Valley, though, we can drop that down to a double colorless also. We have Lampent here, which has the Night March attack also, but we never use Lampent because he's a stage 1. And the whole premise behind Night March is the more Night Marchers you get into the discard pile, the stronger the Night March attack gets. So if we get 6 Night Marchers in the discard pile, we can do 120 damage because it's 20 times 6. If we can get 9 in there, it'll be 180 damage. And if we can get 11 in there, it would be 220 damage. The only problem is there's only 12 Night Marchers. So if you get 11 in the discard pile, you're going to hit for 220, but you're only going to have 1 Night Marcher on your bench. That doesn't seem to be as big of an issue as it used to be, simply because we have Milotic and Buddy Buddy Rescue, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So the idea here, again, is we want to use either Pumpkaboo with a Stadium, or we can use Joltik, and we can hit with massive amounts of damage, and this is a very, very aggro deck, so like turn 1, you could be hitting 180 very easily. I mean, I have my friend who was playing it against me the other day, and I drew past, I had a Seismitoad on the bench, and he pretty much donked me, hitting 180 damage on turn 1. So it's very, very possible with this deck. It's very, very aggro. A lot of people don't like it because it just seems like with the way they've put all the item cards that can just do a ton of draw power, it just makes this deck crazy, for lack of better words. Alright, so that's the idea. We want to try to get 9 Night Marchers in the discard pile, and also, I should say, not necessarily 9. It depends on what you're playing. If you're playing against a mirror match or against a Vespaquin deck, you only need to get enough Night Marchers in there to take the knockouts. You want to be able to stream Night Marchers every turn, but this thing really shines mostly against EX decks, and even Mega decks. It can take Megas out pretty easily. Alright, so let's talk about some of our supporters. So we're playing a Jirachi. This is the Jirachi promo, and at cities you will see this card. This card is especially helpful against Seismitoad and Giratina. Stardust for 1 energy does only 10 damage, but then it discards a special energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. And if you do, prevent all effects of attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon during your opponent's next turn. The thing about it is if Giratina is Chaos Wheeling and you have a Jirachi with energy on it, you can come in use Zero Sick to knock one of the double dragons off, and then come in with Jirachi and Stardust and knock the other double dragon off. And then they're pretty much sitting dead in the water. So this could be very, very useful against Giratina. It's also very helpful against Seismitoad, because if they decide that they want to continue the item lock, they're going to have to attach another double colorless, and you can Stardust it off. So most of the time it's going to break the item lock for at least one turn. That's why I like to put a float stone on Jirachi, because after we knock the energy off, most of the time they're not going to attach another special energy, and then you can retreat and Night March. And it'll allow you to keep moving fast through your deck. So Jirachi's just a really useful promo card. He's not going to be played in every situation, but so many people do use special energy that one of is warranted in the deck. All right, now let's take a look at the 2-2 line of Phoebus and Milotic. Phoebus actually does nothing for us except potentially get sniped. So we have to be real careful. Phoebus, I call him the feeble one, only 30 HP. He can be real easy to knock out. But once he evolves to Milotic, he turns into a 110 HP Pokemon. We don't even use the attack. We just want Milotic for the ability Sparkling Ripple. When you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may put a card from your discard pile into your hand. This is so useful. It allows you to just run through your deck as fast as you want. You don't have to worry about stopping if you need a DCE. Let's say you've already attached one and oh man, I don't want to discard this DCE. Don't worry about it. Milotic will come and get it later. Let's say you need another battle compressor for next turn. Milotic grabs that battle compressor and you get to reuse the battle compressor. Let's say you need a Sycamore or a Hexmaniac or whatever. Milotic will grab that. I've even had the Muscle Band go to the discard pile and then use Milotic to grab the Muscle Band and give us just enough damage to take a knockout. So Milotic, a 2-2 line here of Milotic is really indispensable. It can just come back and be reused over and over because we play scoop ups and we play AZ. So we can scoop up, after we've used Milotic, we can scoop it back up, put the Phoebus back down, and then next turn have a Milotic ready to grab us something else. So you don't have to worry if you don't have a VS Seeker to grab a supporter, because you actually have your 5th and 6th VS Seekers right here. Very, very powerful card, very useful. This card is actually going up in price. Right now, it's still it's less than $1 on TCG Player, but I have a feeling as this card gets more and more popular, you could see this spike up to a couple dollars each. So if you have them, keep them, and if you don't have them and you want to play Night March, go buy these as quickly as possible because you do need a couple of them in this deck. Finally, we play 3 Shaman. Some people are even playing 4 Shaman just to make sure that we have the consistency, because you want to be able to dig through this deck, hitting 20, 30, 40 cards in one turn. It's not unreasonable for that to happen, but most of your draw action comes through Shaman. Matter of fact, many people will be able to draw through most of their deck without needing Sycamore. That's why we only played 2 of them in here. And most people, like most of the Night Marchers now, are trying to Hex Maniac on turn 1, especially if they go first, because then the opponent can't use their Shamans to set up. So, and it also stops bats, stops Bronzong, stops walls. So Hex Maniac, very, very useful in this deck. Alright, so that's our Pokemon line. Let's take a look at our item cards. We use a ton of items, and we're not too worried about item lock. Maybe Trevenant could give us a little bit of worry. Vileplume, if he got a turn 1 Vileplume, that could give us a little bit of problem. But for the most part, if we can go first, then we probably should, simply so we can get at least 1 turn of items, because that's really, once this thing gets rolling, that's all you really need. Alright, we start off with 3 Acrobikes. I'd love to make it 4, but I have a few other little techs like the Jirachi. I like to play 1 red card, so it doesn't allow us to play 4 in this deck. But 3 Acrobikes, look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them in your hand, discard the other. Since we're in this is a a discard deck by design. We're okay with discarding stuff, and Acrobike works perfectly in this deck to allow us to discard more and more Night Marchers. Speaking of discarding Night Marchers, we play 4 Battle Compressors. This allows us to get Night Marchers in the discard pile. This is what makes Night March so strong. 2 Battle Compressors can pretty much put you in 1-hit KO range for just about anything. You need a couple more after that, but with Ultra Ball and Acrobike and other ways to discard, you usually can get the other Night Marchers discarded pretty easily. But 2 Battle Compressors will get you potentially 6 Night Marchers. You may also want to throw like a Sycamore in there so that if you drew a VS Seeker at the beginning of the game, grab back your Sycamore, and then you'll have 5 Night Marchers in the discard pile. But very, very useful card. If you run into 3 Battle Compressors in turn 1, you're pretty much sitting pretty for the rest of the game. All right, we do play the 1 Buddy Buddy Rescue, and if you're not familiar with this, this is brand new from Breakthrough. Each player puts a Pokemon from his or her discard pile into his or her hand, and your opponent chooses first. This can be very useful because sometimes we have to Sycamore a Shaman away, or we have to get rid of a Milotic. Maybe we have the Phoebus on the bench, but the Milotic we had to get rid of. We can Buddy Buddy Rescue those cards, and then get them back and reuse them. Or we can use it for, let's say we're going against a Mega deck and we have to have 11 Night Marchers in the deck, and they knock our last Night Marcher out, goes to the discard pile. Well, guess what? Buddy Buddy Rescue allows us to get another Night Marcher, put it back on the bench, and keep welling away on those Megas. So very, very nice card. We only play a 1 of here because we are playing the Milotics, and they also can get us Pokemon back if we need it. We do play 1 red card. This is more of my preference, and you don't necessarily have to play it, but because we're going through so many cards on turn 1, you know, a good 50 to 60% of the time we run into this card, and if we're going first and they haven't even got a chance to play a card, and we play 30 cards and they're then red carded down to just 4, you may just win the game because there's nothing. If they end up draw passing or they just have nothing in their hand to get going, then you're all set up and they're not, and it's just a matter of time before you Night March for the victory. So 1 red card, very useful. All right, we'll play 3 Super Scoop Ups. Again, because of text, I'd love to see this to go to 4, but we can scoop up Shamans and reuse them, allowing us to dig even deeper into our deck on turn 1. We can also play Milotics, reuse them because of Super Scoop Up. So we play 3 of those. We play 1 town map because it's very helpful to know what's in our prizes, and not just what's in our prizes, but when we go to take a prize card, if there's energy in there that's stuck, it's good for us to get that out. Or if we need to get a supporter, a particular supporter, like we're only playing 1 Lysander, so we need to get that Lysander out, we can grab it. So 1 town map in the deck, that's all we need. Trainer's Mail, we play 3 of those. Look at the top 4 cards of your deck and reveal a trainer card you find there. Just allows us to dig even deeper, keep the deck even more consistent. 4 Ultra Balls allows us to grab our Shamans and also discard Night Marchers, so it's just a twofer. We get double the efficiency from it. So we play 4 Ultra Balls. Floor VS Seekers, because a lot of times our supporters are going to get discarded and we can bring them back. We may not need a particular supporter at the beginning of the game, but as the game goes on, VS Seeker allows us to grab whatever we need at a particular time. Play 1 AZ. This is clutch. Again, allows us to recycle Milotic and Shaman. So it becomes a draw supporter, but also becomes helpful in other ways. Sometimes also, since we're only playing 1 Float Stone, that's our only way to retreat. Sometimes we have to use AZ to get something out of the active that we don't want so we can Night March. So AZ does that for us. 2 Hex Maniac. Now this has been much popularized in the Night March because Night March flows so fast, goes through so many cards so quickly. People are now using Hex Maniac on turn 1 instead of using Sycamore or something else, and then that causes their opponent to not be able to use the Shaman to set up or use any of their abilities. And sometimes you can see someone play 2, VS Seeker for the Hex Maniac and play several Hex Maniacs right in a row. And when you're able to do that, Night March is just usually too overpowered for the opponent to stop them. Also, Night March really does not like bats, so to be able to use Hex Maniac over and over and over against bats is very useful. And so another reason why it's in the deck. Now normally I play 2 Lysanders, but again, because this deck is so fast and furious, we're only going to play the 1. If it does get prized, that's why we need the town map. But 1 Lysander can help us against, especially the Giratina matchup. We want to try to Lysander him up and knock him out before he can Chaos Wheel. That is one of the few matchups that we really, really despise, and that's why we play several techs just against the Giratina matchup, because we want to knock the Double Dragon energy off the board. Or with Lysander, we can Lysander him up and take him out before he's even a threat. 2 Sycamores. Normally we play 4, but again, this deck just flows so fast that we just use 2. Discard your hand and draw 7. The reason why we don't play just 1 is because if it's prized, it could be more detrimental than if Lysander's prized. So we want to have at least a good shot of getting a Sycamore if we need it through a Battle Compressor via Seeker. Alright, final supporter is Zero-Sick. Again, this helps us in the Giratina and Toad matchup, but also being able to knock off a strong energy or a focus sash. If we're playing against a fighting deck where they use a lot of focus sashes, Zero-Sick is our man here, because then we can knock the focus sash off and then Night March for the knockout. And so we don't have to worry about having to use 2 or 3 hits to knock out 1 EX or something like that. So 0-6 helps us with that. The thing is, these guys are very low HP, so just a Yoga Kick from Metacham can knock a couple of them out. So we want to make sure that focus sashes do not get in our way. So 0-6 is there for that. We do play 3-dimension valleys. If we're going against bats, we would rather put the Pumpkaboos out instead of the Joltics, simply because bats can knock out those Joltics so much easier, especially once they get to Crobat. I mean, they could evolve to Crobat, take out a Joltic, and then they could skill dive with the Crobat and take out a second Joltic. So they could take 2 Joltics out, whereas they would only be able to take 1 Pumpkaboo out that way. So we want to play 3-dimension valleys just because we may need to use Pumpkaboo. And also, since he does hit Psychic for weakness, we can hit Lucario for weakness. We can hit Mewtwo for weakness. So Pumpkaboo just, it's not always about using Joltik. Matter of fact, most people prefer to use Pumpkaboo. But requiring the stadium can be a problem. But again, we don't have a problem discarding a stadium because we can always get it back with Milotic if we need it. Alright, we play just a 1-of Floatstone. Again, if we have to blow through it, we can always pick it up later. It usually goes best on that Jirachi, or it can also go on a Shaman if we need it. And that gives us a free retreat and gives us every beginning of every turn, especially with our low HP Night Marchers. They get knocked out. We can also put it on to a Night Marcher, but however, you want to not use that Night Marcher to attack with. You want to keep retreating it and kind of use it as like the last Night Marcher that you attack with. Alright, finally we use 1 Muscle Band. Again, we're hitting so high numbers that we don't need a bunch of Muscle Bands to win. I mean, we can literally hit 180, 200, 220 on turn 1. But if we need to hit 240 Muscle Band can be there for us, and we can even one-shot those Primal Kyogres, Primal Groudon, some of those bigger guys, Mega Tyranitar, fairly easy with the Muscle Band being in play. And then finally for energy, we just play 4 double colorless. Again, you're going to say, well, what about basic energy? What about Giratina? What about Aegislash? All right, so here's the thing. We have all the text in there we need for those things. We play Aegislash. We've got 2 Hex Maniacs and 4 VS Seekers. And we only have to knock out 3 Aegislashes. Very few Aegislashes are going to be able to get powered up as fast as we are. So once we throw in the Hex Maniac, those Aegislashes go bye-bye very quickly. Giratina, again, we've got the Jirachi. We see Giratina on the bench. We go ahead and attach to Jirachi so that we can get the Stardust ready. Zero Sick is also here, so we can Zero Sick a double Dragonoff via Seeker, Zero Sick a double Dragonoff via Seeker, Zero Sick a double Dragonoff. So we can keep playing that game. We may even lose a couple Night Marchers, but eventually he will get worn down with the 0-6. So just remember that. That's our other tech for Giratina. Toad can lock us down. Again, Jirachi or 0-6 can help us with that. So that's why we only play the 4 double colorless and no basic energy. Anyway, guys, that's the deck. You may have seen similar builds like this already, but I felt like if you haven't, you need to be prepared for this deck because it is very strong, it's very powerful, and if you're going to cities this weekend or in the upcoming weeks, you need to be ready for this because it is one of the decks that shows up fairly often. Anyway, guys, this is Pokedad. We're signing off. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and comment below. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.